Hi everyone, Skibbity Toilet here, the internet's busiest music nerd. Kendrick Lamar dropped a new song. That's why you're here. That's why you clicked on this video. A new song has been dropped on 9/11 by Kendrick friggin' Lamar. Yep, brand new track, which he put up on Instagram using a picture of some beat up black Air Force Ones. Many a post about which has been made on the internet, though I think given the photo, the tone sonically of this new track, vocally and instrumentally, might surprise you. Because honestly, it's kind of low key, very soulful, very smooth, nothing nearly as aggressive as what we heard in the midst of Kendrick's beef with Drake just months ago. And given how recently that happened, many have been kind of talking about this track as if it's like an additional diss toward Drake or another victory lap for him in the midst of this beef that he very much took a big fat W in. Of course, since Drake's fans have been very bitterly for months just pretending like he didn't lose when he in fact did. But with that being said, I feel like Kendrick's beef with Drake at this point is truly over and done with, at least still at this point currently. Again, I don't agree with some of the framing that this track is like, oh, Kendrick's starting it up again, this is round two, when no, this is in fact not round two. This is Kendrick not building things back up. If anything, I feel like this track illustrates the fact that Kendrick's beef with Drake was so much bigger than Drake to begin with. And this whole back and forth wasn't really about fighting with a single man. It was more about fighting with what he sees this man as a symptom of. And that is the ideological, the philosophical, the emotional rot within hip-hop music. I'm not positing this or arguing these points myself. I'm merely sort of like communicating the man's framing to you, because I do feel like there is some debate to be had around the points he's making on this track. And I'm not really going to go over this track in terms of like production or wordplay or flow or anything like that. By Kendrick's usual standards, of course, all of those things are good and at a certain quality level. What I really want to focus on here is, again, the messaging and the angle he's trying to take with this track. That's that he sees Drake and artists that are similar to Drake in some way as being representative of a party. And then the party he's talking about is representative of, I guess, an ethos or a lane within rap music currently that specializes mostly in materialism, in spiritual degradation, in scams, in meaningless attempts at just trying to pile up as much money as possible. Kendrick makes it very clear what types of rappers he sees as being superior to these artists and what he, I guess, argues are sort of like leeches within the genre. Some of these new, young, up-and-coming women rappers who are making waves right now, Christian rappers who for a long time have been kind of like framed as uncool or whack, like Lecrae. Artists who tragically passed away and sort of like really represented the root of street culture within the genre, like Nipsey Hussle. He would rather all of that than what is, for the most part, currently ruling the genre as far as like mainstream success at the moment. Now, I don't know how literal he's being in terms of like, you know, wanting the death of the party, as it were, that he mentions in this track. I mean, positive and feel good and what you could say is like party music has always had a really huge place within hip hop music, even at the root of the genre. And I mean, people have certainly been partying to Not Like Us. That track's a jam. So I don't think Kendrick on this track is like literally anti-partying or anything like that. What I feel like he's mostly upset about through his lyrics is just this lack of music that gives listeners and gives people hope, reflects the struggles and problems of average everyday people, gives listeners an opportunity to reflect and think about their lives and themselves, maybe a spiritual connection of some sort, and also provides an opportunity to learn about people and the world around you through either shared or totally different experiences, which you could argue like, yeah, Drake's music doesn't really provide that at all, along with countless other artists who are doing really massive numbers commercially right now too. So without getting any further into the weeds here, that's essentially like the abridged version of what Kendrick is trying to get across on this track. Beyond that, though, the question is like whether or not he's going to be successful in making this change, or if this kind of change is even possible through the attempts of him and a collective of artists, or I don't know, really anything. Because as much as he may be correct on some level to criticize the individuals he feels are like responsible for the rot within hip hop, I feel like the trends and incentives that have created the current rap landscape that we see are even bigger than these people who he's kind of not really mentioning so much by name. Even if Drake and every rapper that Kendrick feels like, I don't know, represents what he does on some level, disappeared tomorrow, I personally have a hard time seeing things like changing radically past that point, because ultimately, I feel like the audience demands would still mostly be the same. Unfortunately, I feel like in a lot of instances, especially when it comes to art and music, the masses would much rather prefer an opiate than something that actually like challenges them or pushes them into a kind of uncomfortable place or causes them to reflect in some way. I mean, even as somebody who is, conscious of this and loves music that is socially or politically active or experimental or strange or challenging in some way, I mean, I like music that's essentially junk food too. Sure, I feel like some people like maybe only listen to stuff I would categorize as junk food, but I can't really like fault them for liking it, at least on some level. But for sure, I don't really disagree with the assessment that maybe right now, culturally and artistically, there is a bit too much of an emphasis on that when it comes to music as a whole. And it's most definitely not being helped by streaming algorithms, which is also a really major player in terms of like the recipe for the times that we're currently in. So again, like much larger than any one artist here, you're talking about audience demands, you're talking about market trends, you're talking about multi-million dollar international corporations that control the music industry and have a huge influence on the things that people listen to and consume. You're talking about record labels, you're talking about charts, you're talking about promotion, you're talking about funding. All of these things play a massive role in terms of like what is popular and what is not. And look, as I have said before on this channel, the political and social hollowing out of underground, left field genres of music and music cultures is something that has repeatedly happened again and again and again and again when a certain scene or a certain flock of artists get popular, hit the mainstream, be it rock and roll or punk music or metal or various strains of electronica, and yes, obviously hip hop too. Like we've seen this time and time and time and time and time and time again. And for sure, Kendrick is in the right to kind of point it out and call it out and want for something different and more substantive. But it still remains that the problem is so much larger than any individual or group of individuals will ever be. And because of that, you have to kind of wonder if, Kendrick lobbying for this change on this track and on others, will it actually kind of, create any momentum for things to be different. In a way, this track almost sees him kind of going back to, that sort of savior complex that he did everything to combat and sort of like, gain some real perspective on with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Maybe because of the impact culturally he had with that Drake beef and how much attention it brought him and also brought kind of this conversation. Maybe he once again feels like it's important to sort of like throw his opinions out there and maybe reframe things a bit and remind people that, hey, my issue here, the problems that I'm having are so much bigger than this one guy. But again, you have to kind of wonder and question how effective him saying that is blatantly as he does on this track, how effective that's going to be, considering that even with this track being so blunt, there are some people already that are just like missing the point. Oh man, he's starting shit again. Kendrick has another one in him. It's round two. So yeah, with this track, I feel like Kendrick is most definitely keeping the conversation going. But again, coming away from it, even with it being as good of a song as it is, I have to wonder, is this problem so large that one guy can't change it? Is the frame he's placing focusing on the problem large enough, because it seems like he's mostly kind of laying it at the feet of individuals as opposed to incentive structures. And what would a rap landscape where the changes Kendrick desires actually happen even look like? Let me know down in the comments if you feel so inclined. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Kendrick Lamar, forever.